Hey guys, I'm back with another video. How are you doing today? So today I want to go over some nano dimension price predictions. This is kind of more in the short term, not super long term. By short term I mean like in the next year and within like the next month and week. So first I want to go over this. Today nano dimensions closed at 374, which it only closed a penny shorter than on Friday. So it didn't move at all basically. Market cap stays at 960 million. And then here I have their revenue estimates. They're actually going to report earnings on the 31st, which is this Thursday. So make sure to be looking out for that, and I'll probably post a video going over their earnings report for the year of 2021 and also their fourth quarter. So they actually put out a statement that says they expect revenues of Q4 2021 to be 7 million and then 10 million for the entire year, which last year for 2022 they had $3.4 million in sales, which would give them a sales growth of 194% year over year. And then projected revenues for 2022 right now is 41.2 million, which would give them a 312% year over year growth from 2021. All right, now here I've also adjusted their price to sales, and this is factoring in if they do $10 million in sales of 2021, which is what they said, then their price to sales would go down from 197.5 down to 95.9, which is actually really good to see their price to sales go below 100. That's pretty significant. It's still really high, but it's a lot better than what it once was. And then here they have their total cash. Total cash actually exceeds their market cap, which is really crazy. So that actually, since they have so much cash on hand and very little debt, their book value per share is $5.74, whereas their stock price is $3.74, which means that this company is technically undervalued, because if we took all this cash and we divided it evenly among all the shareholders, then each shareholder would get $5.74 per share. So if you bought it now and they did that, then you would actually make money, which is crazy to think about. So now I want to get into the price predictions. So here I have NVIDIA and Tesla pulled up with their valuation measures, and there's just a couple things I want to point out. So these companies, they both have high price to earnings ratios. NVIDIA's at 73, Tesla's over 200, and then they both have high price to sales ratios and high price to book ratios. So these are companies that are like technically overvalued, but at the same time it's hard to value these companies because they have usually value is calculated in what the company owns and how much product they sell and everything. But these companies, like especially NVIDIA and Tesla, they have a lot of focus on stuff that you can't really see, such as like software and AI. So it's a lot harder to put value on that. That's why these companies, they have like a lot higher price to sales and higher price to earnings ratio. And then also these companies are expected to outperform other companies greatly. So these are companies that are expected to grow like 30% or more for the foreseeable future, like the next 5 years or more. So they're expected to make lots and lots and lots of money. That's why their stock prices are so high. Now, here I did some calculations. If we look at these two price to sales ratios, if we calculate a price to sales ratio of 20 for 2022 for Nano Dimensions, and we take their projected $41.2 million revenue for 2022, and we multiply it by 20 because of the 20 price to sales ratio, then that would actually give Nano Dimensions a fair market cap of 824 million. Now current market cap is 960 million, so it would actually be less, meaning that this company is like super overvalued right now if we are using these numbers. And then if we take their market cap divided by their outstanding shares, then that would actually give us a fair value of $3.21 for their share price. Current share price $3.74. So if you bought in right now at $3.74 and fair value is $3.21, then we'd be facing a downside risk of 15%. So it's honestly like 15%, not that bad at all. Obviously you don't want to lose money, but it's not like ridiculous. Like 15% is okay, which that would actually make this stock like maybe like a little overvalued right now, but not too much. And then with the current book value of 574, as I talked about earlier, the which if you use that as a fair valuation measure, then we have a 53.5% upside. So a lot more upside than downside. And then similarly, I have another way to calculate their fair value. So if we take their 2022 $41.2 million revenue, and we assume that this company is actually profitable in 2022, which I'm not sure if they will be, probably not, but if we assume that they are profitable and they have a 20% profit margin, which I think is fair for this type of company. It could be more, could be less, but I'm going to assume 20%. So that would actually give us $8.24 million in earnings, which would give us a 20% profit margin. So earnings per share would be 0.032. So a little over 3 cents a share. And if we use a PE, price to earnings ratio of 100, which is pretty similar to what Nvidia has and to what Tesla's looking towards for 2022, then that would actually give us a fair stock price of $3.21, which is really crazy because that's actually the same number as over here. Two different calculations, but I arrived at the same fair stock price. Now, obviously that would give us a 15% downside. But if we use a price to earnings ratio of 200, which I think would be pretty fair as well, because right now Tesla has a price to earnings ratio of 200, and this company is expected to grow ridiculously, 200% this year, 300% next year. So it's growing. Like this company is, their revenues are growing really fast. So price to earnings ratio of 200 isn't like that crazy when you think about it. So that would actually give us a fair stock price of $6.42, which is pretty good, because that would actually be over its book value, which would make a lot more sense than what's happening right now. So that would give us 71.7% upside. Now, having said all that, I want to go over to the charts. So here I have Nano Dimensions pulled up on the daily chart. And then here I have some stuff drawn out. So here, they've been downtrending since the 10th of February, basically, of last year. So over a year now, which is really crazy. If we take I drew out like a long-term area of resistance. So, downtrending resistance, Nano Dimensions doesn't seem to be able to be breaking out of this area. But recently, actually, Nano Dimensions has been trading sideways, which gives it an opportunity to break out of this area of resistance, and you can actually see it's trading within the area of resistance I've drawn out. So it has an opportunity to break out. Now, these shaded areas are key levels of, this one is key level of support, an area of support, and then key area of resistance. And this is where Nano Dimensions has been trading between since the beginning of the year actually. So it's been a few months that this stock has been trading within these levels. Now you can see it's within this downtrending area of resistance, and it's in between these two levels of support and resistance. So with earnings coming up pretty soon and the stock price within this range, I'm going to have to say that the stock is going to have to make a decision pretty soon within the next few days. And since earnings is on Thursday and it's before hours, we're going to see, I think we're going to see a lot of price movement on Thursday and on Friday. And then, Monday, the dust will probably settle a little more. But Thursday and Friday, the prices are probably going to move a lot. So, if you aren't comfortable with that, then I wouldn't really recommend you holding this stock. For me, I'm a long-time shareholder, so I don't really mind. But I do think that, events like this are important. So actually these two green lines, this one is a long time level of resistance. You can see it actually goes back pretty far. And then this is a long time level of support, which actually goes back to the October 2020. So over a year. So I think over the long term, Nano Dimensions, we could see it trading between these two green lines. Short term between these two shaded areas, long term between these two green lines. So this stock is going to have to make a decision pretty soon. I think if it did break out, then we could see it like it would go up up to here, and then it would kind of go down, and then maybe this would become new level of support, and then it would kind of trade between these two areas until it can make a decision more later down on the road. And then here, if something catastrophic happened for some reason and the stock just went tumbling down and it just could not come back up for some reason, then the absolute lowest and the worst case scenario, I would see it hitting a 75 cent stock price, which that's pretty sad. But we saw that in 2020 actually, before it had its massive run up to almost $18. But yeah, I don't see that as a likely scenario. It should stay above this green line, and depending on earnings, if earnings is somewhat positive and if investors are satisfied with the direction that this company is taking and its future potential, then we could see a run up, and this would be my price, my maximum price target for the run up, which would actually give us a almost 45% return. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this stock. Let me know what you guys think of my price analysis, and then on the charts, and then my calculations and its fair value. But yeah, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.